Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and welcome to the Page Chewing Friday Conversations. As always, I'm here with my friend and co host, PL Stewart. And tonight, our guests are Mr. Tim Hardie and Jacob Sannox.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you both for joining us. What did PL do to get you to come here tonight? I'm curious. What did he blackmail you with?
Oof, difficult. I think I was more begging him to come on the show, if I'm perfectly honest. But I'm not. I don't mind admitting that. So yeah. So I think it was more my idea than anybody else's.
I don't know
Page
about
chewing
that.
is definitely becoming a thing. So yeah.
Wow.
They know they just want me to embarrass them and wave their books up. You know what I mean? I got them all set up. That's what they came for. That's what they came for. They want to get embarrassed while I show off how much of a fanboy I am of their work. So that's what they came.
We're very grateful for it.
So Tim and Jacob, will you both give us a quick introduction?
Yeah, do you want to go first, Jacob?
Yeah, can do. I am Jacob Sannox. I am an indie published author. My first series is called The Dark Oak Chronicles, which is dark epic fantasy or grimdark, so I'm told. That's the first one, Dark Oak. Age of the Dryad is the second one. And I also write a strange little trilogy called The Return of King Arthur, which has dual timelines set in various periods of history and also 2019, 2020. Got The Raven Master's Revenge. It's quite a quick read. And Agravain's Escape, which is sort of set in various periods with quite a lot of Victorian. And the last book, Tristan's Regrets, about to come out, hopefully in the next month or so.
Oh, wow. Very close.
Cool. So I'm Tim Hardie. So I was the author of Hall of Bones, which is my sort of Viking Game of Thrones mashup, I suppose, is probably the best way to describe that. That was SPFBO finalist in SPFBO 7. I think I'm remembering that right. So that's kind of probably what people have kind of most know me for at the moment, and that series has been continuing. Brotherhood of the Eagle series, so I've had a couple more books out in that since then. And because obviously the best thing to do when you're writing a quartet of books is to not finish that series, what I've decided to do is go slightly tangential. So I'm getting ready to release a sort of related standalone within that fantasy series. So that's a book called Quiet Vengeance, which is, I don't know if you can see that here. It's that's the only physical copy in existence at the moment, which is slightly weird. So it's still got the not for resale banner wrapped around. So that's coming out on the 15th of April. So I'm just gearing up for making people aware of it, which is one of the reasons why I've decided to make an appearance tonight. So, and there's no shame in that whatsoever. So yes,
no shame at all. No, I'm glad you're both here. It's great to talk to Tim again, and of course Jacob. It's their first time, but
Thank you.
Yeah, glad you can make it. So Tim, what is it? I'm always curious what it's like, and also for Jacob too, with your book being released soon. What is it like as you get closer and closer to release day, knowing you've worked on something for so long, you put so much of yourself into it? What is that like? Getting closer and closer.
What is that like? I think it makes you really grateful for advanced reviewers, if I'm honest with you. When I released Hall of Bones, it was kind of like it was just simply dropping a book out into the void. I had no expectations. I had no real. I was just delighted that it was out there and it was available for people to buy, and that was the sole purpose. I think when you're releasing multiple books, I think for me the pressure kind of increases with each release. So you want to make the next book better than the one that's gone before, and you want it to be well received. And I think particularly with this one, with the Quiet Vengeance, sort of like not finishing the quartet and needing that break and going into something a little bit different, it felt to be a little bit of a risk. So yeah, I think getting out to reviewers has been quite important, actually, to give me a bit of confidence. Actually, that is quite a good book, and I shouldn't be too worried about it, quite frankly. But there's definitely pressure with it, and again, it's the start of it's the start of a new series as well. So from that point of view, will it be as successful as the one that's gone before? You're always measuring yourself when you've got to start to get multiple books out. So I think probably a lot of it self-inflicted, but yeah, I suppose a little bit of pressure, a little bit of nervousness, and then kind of it's a weird mix of excitement and relief actually. So you're working at it for so long, it can be very tiring to get to the end point thinking it's ready. So there's a moment of relief of just completing the work, and then it's kind of once you release it, it's sort of it's out of your hands, isn't it? That's the scary bit of it, really. All of a sudden you're it's entirely what readers think is the only thing that really matters.
Jacob, what about you?
I find myself getting curiously detached towards the end of the book, actually. I think because I've done so many passes by that point, it's usually gone out. I never pronounce this right. Beta readers. By the time it's gone out to them, I've pretty much done everything that I can on it, and I just try and forget about it. And I took a bit of advice from Stephen King and started to move on to separate projects in between it going out to readers and me doing the final draft. So by the time it comes back, it literally does feel like somebody else's book. And I'm also heavily invested in the next story. So I wrote my Return of King Arthur novels as, started out as a distraction between drafts of the Dark Oak books. And then it became something of its own and longed out the finishing of that trilogy because suddenly I had 2 trilogies on the go. But it's knowing that I'll have completed my first trilogy with this book. That's a very exciting prospect to know that I'll actually have something complete that's out there.
I think it's interesting how everyone has different approaches to that. But I want to get through a couple. Khad, glad you can join us. Our friend Alicia's here. Glad you can make it.
Hello.
Helena, hi everyone, and glad to see fellow Brits on the panel. And obviously, Stephen. Oh yeah, you guys are okay.
Yeah, we're okay too, right?
You're okay. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then Black and Blue Collar Reader. How's it going down? So Tim, with A Quiet Vengeance coming out, what is that book about? What's the synopsis for it?
Okay, trying to simplify it then. Basically, it's I suppose fundamentally a Middle Eastern inspired fantasy story. So it takes the same world that you get in All the Bones in terms of the Viking setting. Basically, you move across to another continent where it's the same world, but also very different world. So Middle Eastern fantasy, and it's really about 2 specific characters. So you have Nimsa, who's basically at the beginning of the book a street urchin, a street rat in a criminal gang. And then you have the Crown Prince of the Emirate in which she lives, who again as a boy. They meet, and I don't want to sort of give any spoilers away, but basically they meet and have a past, which then spills out into the events of the future present day series of the novel. So it's basically a dual timeline structure. So you have them as children and their interaction, and then something basically happens in terms of a secret they effectively end up sharing and hiding together that has unexpected consequences that then ripple out in their adult lives when they're basically very different people. So it's not what I would call sword and sorcery fantasy or anything like that. There is magic, and that it is definitely a work of fantasy rather than historical fiction, but it's primarily a character-driven fantasy. So if that's the kind of thing you like, A Quiet Vengeance is probably worth taking a look at, really. So yeah, that's what it is in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I have to say, because now I get to gush a little bit because
not too much. We're British. We do not want.
But I'm Canadian though. So I was privileged to have an arc of A Quiet Vengeance, and I'll say this: I predict that it is going to be considered critically one of the top indie books released this year, without a doubt. And this is in a year we're going to see releases from people like Philip Chase and others. We've had Daniel T. Jackson release his book, but A Quiet Vengeance is going to be ranked up there with the biggest releases of indie of the year. That's my prediction. It is fabulous, absolutely fabulous. So
Oh, thank you. I don't know what to say to that, but let's hope you're right. Let's go with that.
Our friend Daniel is here to help us out. The UK pronunciation is supposed to be beta. It's the US that says beta. Original Greek is vita. So there you go.
There we go. So I was just
that up then, hasn't it? Straight away.
I was just right in every direction. Yeah, I just second that. I got an art copy of A Quiet Vengeance as well, and it's it's quite something. I'm looking forward to seeing what the response is like. I'm a bit of a fanboy for Tim's stuff anyway, which
Jacob's so modest. He's no slouch.
No,
he doesn't hype up the fact that he's a back-to-back SPFBO semifinalist for his books, and it's funny how it's hard as an author to get a sense of and it's all subjective, right? Where everyone is in the landscape, what books are truly popular, what books are more hype and not. But Jacob is just a phenomenal writer. He knows his Dark Oak series for me. I love his author stories. His Dark Oak series for me is just, it has a really special place in my heart. It's one of my favorite fantasy series, and I think I'm just waiting for him to write the next one.
Bill's feedback keeps me going on this series. No, thank you. Appreciate that.
You're muted, Steve. You're muted.
Jeez. Speaking of Vita and Beta and Beta readers, if I can get all the pronunciations right, how do you choose beta readers? For actually all of you, how do you choose who to send your books out to get that feedback? What feedback do you look for? Are there certain people, certain groups? What do you look for that feedback to know that it's ready for release?
I think by necessity to start with, I was looking for people who were people I knew, who was friends and family to start with, who were sort of passionate about getting hold of it. And it's quite often people that you wouldn't expect necessarily. And the people that put their hands up for Dark Oak have put their hands up for every other book, and each of them has contributed quite considerably to it, and a different kind of feedback as well. And then as time has gone on, I've added a couple. My parents were go-tos because they were both journalists, so they gave quite a thorough read through. But I'm only just starting out with giving out art copies, unlike these guys. So that'll be my first time doing that this year.
Yeah, it's still quite a small group for me. I've got to admit, I think, I'm also been quite slow on this. Like, again, when I released that first book, I did not know what I was doing. And one of the ways in which I didn't know what I was doing quite clearly was I didn't actually realize I needed to send that book to anybody else. So, obviously it's brilliant when your mum reads it, isn't it? That's fab. You want that. But you can't really build a writing career off your mum reading your book. You do need to actually find other readers and hook them in. And it's taken me quite a while to sort of like, I suppose, get organised enough. I think Quiet Vengeance is the first book I've been actually organised with my launch to the point I've actually surprised myself. So a bit like Jacob said, some of it is your friends and family. I've got some good friends that have literally read every book I've written, and that's fantastic. But frankly, I've just started to make myself a bit more. If people want an arc, I'm happy to give them one. It doesn't mean they absolutely have to write a review, or it would be really helpful if they did. But a lot of book bloggers, or just sort of, I suppose, what I almost call serial reviewers. If they like your writing, they make a real difference, don't they? So I've basically widened that pool, I think, this time round. And it has, again, like I say, from a confidence point of view, you're on the right track. But also it just helps create that buzz. It's actually quite an essential part of the whole writing process and actually the book sale process. So, you really need to build that list up and, maintain those contacts from release to release, really. Because I think the other thing that's not always, it's quite a big commitment from their point of view as well to be ARC readers or beta readers, isn't it? So, not everyone has the time and the capacity to sort of stay with you. So, you always need to be reaching out and finding new people all the time to sort of interested in your series, interest in your new one, those kind of things. It's quite a key part of it. But yeah, I think probably the majority of mine have all come from Twitter, actually. That seems to be where I get the most traction for, people who put out that call. I did it on Facebook and Twitter, but Twitter was the one where people reacted and put their hand up, join writing groups, all those kind of things. You need all those networks, I think, to sort of like keep get that input and as wide a pool of people as you can do. Really, that's the crucial thing.
Yeah, I have to agree. And it's funny, as series gain traction. I remember, Deb, my business partner, my lovely wife. Hey, Deb, love you very much. She's the one who was taking care of sending out arcs for my first book, A Drowned Kingdom. And of course, when no one knows who you are, you may send out hundreds of arcs, which I think she did, and you get a handful. It's like cricket. You get a handful of bloggers who say yes, and some of them, I have to give a shout out to them from the beginning. They enjoyed the book and they started promoting it, and that really helped a lot. People like Blaze, I quoted from Under the Radar Books. He was one who also enjoys Tim's work. There's a handful, and then from there, it's funny compared to this book now, 3 books in, where and I still do the same. I still send out arcs, but it's a lot more selective now, and I'm blessed enough now that there's actually, believe it or not, there's actually people who ask me, bloggers who ask me for an arc, which is very, very different from when I started, right? So that's really heartwarming. That hopefully I've improved as a writer, and the books, the series is slowly gaining a little bit of traction. But yeah, I confine it to a very small circle in terms of bloggers, specific bloggers that I send out to, and in terms of beta people that I trusted readers and people who I trust their opinion. I like to hear what they have to think because I respect them as writers or as people give critiques. Well, 3 of them are right here. So I think amongst Jacob, myself, and Tim, we have our little Marmite group that I think we share a lot with, and we get a lot of feedback with, ongoing feedback, different aspects of writing and sorts of things. So it's a very trusted group and a safe space where you can share your work, and that's a very primary part of my kind of unofficial beta type group. But yeah, there's a certain amount of bloggers that now I definitely feel like I'm grateful to them. They seem to enjoy my work, and they now ask for that. And then I'm expanded a bit. I've kind of branched out a little bit and kind of taken that risk. It's really nerve-wracking when you send your book to the other bloggers that maybe you don't have, quite the relationship with, but, still you feel that, if they like your work, it can really help, it can really help the traction again for your career. And, you do that, you take the chance that they might not like it, but, however, even them just mentioning your book can potentially have a huge impact on sales and things like that. So again, it's nerve-wracking, and it's the same nerve-wracking feeling you get just being a published author, period. That dichotomy of, I want everyone to read my book, and I'm so scared they're going to read it because they're going to hate it. And, that's what we go through, right? But yeah, so again, I'm very blessed that, and of course I'm certainly not some highly well-read author, but at least I'm better read than I was when I started. So
yeah, I think I never really understood how, writing is only part of the thing, isn't it? Obviously, if you can write a book and have pleasure from that, and write creatively and put it in a drawer, there's nothing wrong with that, is there? There's nothing wrong with being creative and nothing wrong with expressing yourself artistically, privately. But if you want to actually sort of, do what I think a book is there to do, is actually for other people to read it as well, beyond your mum. You read this part of the whole talking about it, having the enthusiasm about it, and actually finding readers and putting yourself out there. It's something which I think all authors have to sort of overcome. I think I'm naturally quite a shy person, actually, and for me, that sort of, like you said, that joining that writing group was actually quite a pivotal moment for me. If I hadn't done that, I think I would have possibly cracked actually under the pressure of trying to sort of maintain that momentum without having that input. Because I don't think actually writing is a completely solitary profession when you get into the realms of releasing more than one book and trying to sort of sustain that kind of output. And you do need those moments where you've got people to sort of give you that sounding board, yeah, you're on the right track. You know, if you haven't got that weather vane, you can easily get yourself into a cul-de-sac, get lost, get stuck, get writer's block. So for me, it's, you know, I think that sort of writing group has actually been critical in being able to maintain that. And that's even having an agent, that's even having somebody that sort of like supports you in that kind of way. That more day-to-day contact that you need is absolutely essential, I think, for anybody that's sort of serious about doing this, you know, over the long haul, basically.
Yeah, people you can trust not to just be an echo chamber as well. They're afraid to tell you the truth.
Yeah,
not afraid to tell you the truth.
Because you need to hear it, don't you? No one's perfect. I think that's the thing that, you know, no one writes a perfect book, bang, straight away. So you do need, you don't want people. I've heard about the nightmare stories of people that have been in toxic writing groups that have actually sort of crippled their creativity. That must have been absolutely awful. But I think you need to find that group of people you can trust. That just means that you can progress, develop, hone your skills, but also they'll lift you up as well. You know, that all those things are really, really important, actually.
Yeah, it's impossible to get by without having that group. For me, I mean, the you know, the people that will, you know, give you a little pat when you get a negative review, and, you know, keep you level-headed when you get some reward or you get something really positive happen, and, you know, anybody, and you can share that with them, and, you know, just be you and just say how you really feel, and that's really important. As Tim said, I've found that that's, you know, that's really a critical part of the journey. So sorry. Anyways, there's a question there from Helena.
Helena always has great questions. I think she's trying to take my job. But please may I ask the authors which books they say, if you enjoyed X, you'd enjoy my book. That was a great question.
It's a difficult question. I can tell you what I think the answer is for Tim.
Go on. Yeah, that'd be really helpful because I don't know. So that'd be great.
I can say for Tim too, and for Jacob. I could tell you for both of them. Yeah.
I struggle with my own. I don't really know, and I probably should know. If you like X, you'll like mine. For Tim, when I was reading Hall of Bones, I was definitely reminded of Robin Hobb, and sort of like a blend of Robin Hobb and George R. Martin. Stands on its own 2 feet and isn't sort of derivative, but there was a nice nostalgia to it in the way that I got from the early Fitz scenes. Regarding mine, I think like the King Arthur ones, if you kind of like Highlander, actually, and I don't mean literally the films, not books. The structure is quite similar with the modern story and going back and forward. It's not quite urban. I never quite know where to put this one. It's a very indie book in the sense I don't know what shelf it will go on. I don't know whether the others could help me answer for it.
I can chuck because I sort of very much see that King Arthur series as it's your classic modern thriller. So it's kind of like, almost like Jack Reacher kind of territory in some ways. You know, you got the thrills in the modern era. It's the thrills and spills. But then I suppose what makes it harder to classify is when you're in the past. That's I suppose really more your traditional fantasy, really. I mean, I've kind of almost got Sherlock Holmes vibes by the end of Agravain's Revenge, when you're sort of in that Jack the Ripper kind of era part of the book. That was really strong, I think, for me. But yeah, you're right. It is incredibly indie, which I think is part of the fun, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't know how to pitch it to sell it to someone, so I'll just publish it. That's easier.
Yeah, this is where we're going wrong. we need better comparators. I suppose if you like the Vikings TV shows, I think probably for me, I think the Robin Hobb I think came through as a bit of an aesthetic with it, but for me, I suppose it's Vikings, Game of Thrones. Bit of Robin Hobb thrown in there, especially at the beginning, really, for me. I am struggling a little bit with my latest to kind of come up with a comparator because it wasn't really, it was born out of a character. It wasn't really born out of another book. I thought that might work if I took that as inspiration. It was more character driven, really. So I must confess I'm struggling a little bit with the latest on that one.
Oh, I think I see in A Quiet Vengeance, Tim, I see a lot of, if you read Zamil Akhtar, which Steve has, I see a little bit of gunmetal gods in there, definitely, and especially with the Eastern inspired, very lush, rich, for sure, as Jacob said, George R. R. Martin is the first thing I think of when it comes to Tim's books. I told him he's my George R. R. Martin fix until George R. R. Martin finishes his series, which is probably never going to happen. So I'll probably read 10 more books of Tim's before George R. R. Martin finishes his series, right? So, you know, and definitely the Vikings. Yeah, the Vikings TV show element, a bit of, Bernard Cornwell, John Gwynne kind of, you know, with Tim's book in terms of the Norse element, and John Gwynne, Hunger of the Gods, that Jacob's book, it's funny, probably some, you know, it's not a direct link, but yeah, the Sherlock Holmes, that was excellent by Tim. But I also feel like Jacob's books, you know, Steve, you've read the Prince of Nothing, obviously, and all of that, you know, R. Scott Bakker. There's a little bit of, because Jacob's books are surprisingly dark. And when I mean surprisingly, I mean it sneaks up on you. Like you're reading it and it doesn't seem that dark at first. And this is, you know, okay, you know, it's a bit more, you know, it seems like your standard fantasy, and then it gets really dark. And wow, how did this get so dark? It's great, but you know, it takes you down that dark path that you weren't really expecting. Right. And it's beautiful. It's so well done, but it just sneaks up on you. And that's how I feel about reading Bakker, that you're in this thing that it doesn't seem as dark at first. And then suddenly you're sucked down this dark hole, and, you know, where you can't get out. But I did love it. It actually reminds me a bit too. And it's not because of any juvenile aspect. It reminds me a bit of very classical works that I read when I was a child, like a bit of C.S. Lewis and a bit of Lord Alexander, the more allegorical. Like there's something about Jacob's, the Dark Oak series I'm speaking of specifically, that reminds me of those books. So, which is a compliment, obviously, a high compliment. So, but my books are almost impossible, I think, to quantify. I don't know what Jacob and Tim and Steve think, who've read them all. I mean, Steve, actually, I appreciate the comparison to you know, to Ken Louis and his you know, his work, you know, that you said in your review of my book. And, you know, I think there's some JRM in there. I mean, I think excuse me, most people seem to compare things like the battle scenes and stuff to him, and the world building. You know, again, you know, Tim wrote something I said where I was very flattered. He said a combination between JRM and Tolkien, with the part one of A Drowned Kingdom. But I don't know what Jacob and Tim think, but yeah.
I think with yours, it is difficult to classify. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's just a slightly unusual, the structure you've got. I think it kind of, for me, yeah, that there is a Tolkien vibe to it. I think that the history of what you write, PL, very much, you know, it's compacted, but yet it still also goes back hundreds of years, and you almost don't notice that's happening sometimes. Oh, right, they're talking about stuff that happened ages ago. That's almost Silmarillion-like. So yeah, I think for me, probably the closest analogy is a bit of a combination of Tolkien, but then kind of going into GRM as well, in terms of that, I suppose, just the nastier side of what you're actually tackling in those books, really. So I think those are probably touchstones for it. But then, yeah, I do think all of us have a bit of a unique voice as well, and I think that's the crucial thing. You know, it's not the same as, it's referenced by, and it's informed by, and then you take it and it's something slightly new.
I think I'm right in saying that all of yours, PLs, it's all single point of view character, isn't it? And it's all first person, in a quite an expansive tale in a big world, and I find that quite unusual. And I put in my review of A Drowned Kingdom that it sort of reminded me of a private memoir of an old medieval king or something along those lines. I remember thinking, because it's got those layers of self-deception in the narrator's voice, and I kind of imagined, like, if Henry VIII wanted to fictionalize his own reign, I think it might not read that far from this. Like, he'd be able to justify everything he was doing, but somebody else would read it and be like, you're not the most self-aware chap, are you? That kind of thing. Yeah, I can't think of a direct comparison, but then I haven't read hugely widely when it comes to fantasy, because I got quite a lot of tunnel vision when I was younger. So for me, if I read somebody similar, they're very like P.L. Stewart.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's historical fiction actually is probably a good comparison as well, actually. But if you like you're an unreliable narrator, then that's just a bit of spice to the mix, really. So I think that probably answers that question in terms of it's a bit like all those things. Yeah, it's nothing like them at all whatsoever. So I don't know if that's any use.
Oh, thank you.
Can I just jump back to mine quickly? So I say about Dark Oak. It comes from a love of Tolkien. I didn't want it to be derivative. I left off writing epic fantasy for a long, long time because I didn't want it to be at all similar. But I wrote it with the love of Tolkien in my heart. But it's a much darker tale. But a lot of people have said it is a more classic tale in the style of Tolkien. So I guess if you like older, more classic styles, the Dark Oak series is probably for you. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, I'd have to agree, and I pick up it. I forgot to mention this in your work, Dark Oak specifically, Jacob. I am picking up. It's almost a little bit of now that I've read Jenny Wirtz. There is some Jenny Wirtz in your book, and again, high praise I would say because Jenny's my favorite author of all time. But yeah, it is the intricacy of the psychological, philosophical aspect, I think, is really what hooks me on your series, and really exploring those characters that are very, very complex, and your books aren't that long, but you do such a great job with the character work of really getting into, who these people are, the nitty gritties of all their little dirty, the dirty things about them, and just I really enjoy that. And I think
you literally just reminded me that before I started writing, I wrote a historical fiction. I wrote one novel set in the Napoleonic Wars, and I remember thinking, how am I going to go about this fantasy thing? Because I don't want to sound like Tolkien. Like his thing was language and linguistics and that kind of stuff. And I thought, I'm never going to sit there making up languages and things. That's not going to be the strength of mine. But I did do a psychology degree, and I was 4 years into a psychology PhD at that time. And I thought, actually thinking about the way people's minds work and the defenses and things that we use from ourselves and, to hold back others was one of the primary motivators. And also because there's so many nature-based creatures in mine, I sat there and had to spend a few days thinking, what would a tree think about this situation? Really trying to put yourself into other people's shoes or roots.
And our friend Joao is here. Good evening, everyone. Very much looking forward to these gentlemen's Kickstarter anthology.
Yes. Anatomy of Fear. It's going to be great.
Yeah,
you guys want to talk a little bit about that, the Anatomy of Fear, and what you're...
Yes, we do. Before we do, I know Mr. Silva has his debut book coming out soon. I think in May. And he's sending out arcs at the moment, so maybe check him out on Instagram.
Congrats.
Yes.
Oh, you have one, Steve? Oh,
yeah,
congratulations.
it showed up on my inbox yesterday. I've been bothering him for months. So do not forget about me, Joel. He did it. So
congratulations, Joel. All the best with your release. I'm sure it'll be phenomenal. So
don't do what I did. Go and get arc readers and get a buzz going straight away. Don't just release it into the void. So I'm sure you'll do well. Anatomy of Fear, then. So I suppose I'm really. It's quite nice to say, please. I don't have to sit there say now, please fund our Kickstarter. Because our Kickstarter is fully funded, which is fantastic. So thank you very much. If you were one of the people that actually supported that project, I have to admit, I was dreading starting it because I really thought we might raise £100 and then just go home and wish we'd never started. But Holly Tinsey sort of really marshaled this project and led it absolutely superbly. She really did. The marketing side of this was absolutely phenomenal, and actually she really got the word out. So we hit every stretch goal going. It's going to be a really good quality product as a result of that, physical product now as a result of that, with an awful lot of bespoke artwork that goes with it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, which might be an issue if you haven't heard of the Anatomy of Fear, it's basically an anthology of fantasy horror stories. So short fiction not connected in any way. So just 12 authors coming together, taking a brief basically to write a fantasy horror story based around the inspiration of a body part of some description. So I've got ears and hearing. Jacob, you're the liver. Have I remember that right?
That's right. As you can tell.
Yeah. No comment or judgment on this call. So basically we got 12 different indie authors all contributing their particular stories in their particular body part, but that's about the only thing they've got any kind of link to. Other than that, they're all very disparate, very different styles, different eras, and so on. And that's it. Is that Steve putting that up? So that's our Kickstarter page at the moment. I've never done an anthology before, so it's quite an exciting process, really. We're funded, we're going with it. All the stories are pretty much written, but we're kind of now in the middle of the sort of editing stages. Sarah Chorn is leading on that side of things, which again is a bit of a coup. And we've got RJ Bailey doing an audio version of all the stories as well. So again, with hitting the targets, we're going to get an audio book out, which will be my first audio work as well. So hopefully out in about October if things go well. But I think we'll know better once we've got through that sort of editing stage how we're actually doing practically, really. Have I covered everything there, Jake, or anything else to add?
No, I think you definitely have. It's quite an exciting project. I'm very pleased to see my name up there with so many other and better known authors as well. I can't wait for October.
Yeah, the caliber of this project and the caliber of the authors it just blows your mind who's involved, including, Jacob's too modest, but he's a lot better known that he will let on there. But authors like Jacob and Tim and Holly and Zamil Akhtar and Trudy Sky, it's just, the list goes on. It's just a who's who of indie sci-fi and fantasy authors. It's phenomenal. I'm humbled to be writing the foreword, and this anthology is going to be something else. Thank you, Steve, for being one of the backers. It is going to be fantastic. So cannot wait for this. So
I couldn't click fast enough. So just the lineup of the amazing talent and so many great people. It was like a reader's dream come true seeing that pop up. Yeah. The team assembled is just I did have a question for both of you, and this is something I talked a bit about with Tim last time Tim and Holly were there, but I always wanted to get some more expensive input on this, and Jacob now here too, which is great. So let's talk a bit about SPFBO. Okay, so because you two have enjoyed a lot of success with SPFBO. As I mentioned earlier, Jacob, you're one of the very few back-to-back semifinalists. That's and consecutive back to like both years running, like that's and Tim, obviously you're a finalist. Can you talk about what it's done for your career, and also for those of you who have not been involved in SPFBO, it's something so glorious and it's something so terrifying, right? It is the best and the worst of everything. And kudos to Mark Lawrence for putting this together and all the bloggers that are involved. But it is a pressure cooker for one, and it's only seeming to grow as the profile of the contest grows. It can really potentially, and you gentlemen will tell me or not, it can potentially impact your career. Talk a little bit about SPFBO and what it's done and what it means to you in terms of your writing career.
I'll let you go first, Jake, because I need to plug my laptop in because it's about to die. It's just told me. So hold that thought. I'll be back in a sec.
Nice excuse. SPFBO, I wasn't part of a writing community at all. I've been going it alone. I think I wanted to become an author since I was like 5. I remember thinking I want to be a best-selling author by the time I hit 14, which I'm still waiting. But SPFBO, somebody at work mentioned to me, I think it was it Kitty's review channel on YouTube? And she mentioned this competition and said, why don't you put your book forward for it? So I did for the next year. And I'd say the major thing it did for me is it gave me all of you guys, really. It gave that community. It introduced me, first of all, to So I messaged everybody in my group to start with to just say, what have we done? And then, just started following along and got to know so many people. And it's been absolutely invaluable. I feel like I've made some real true friends around the world from doing that. But aside from that, I think I got quite lucky because all I wanted out of it was a pleasant review or a kind word, really. I was just scared that it would be completely trashed. And to have it sort of picked to move beyond the initial selection, semi-finalists pretty much got you up to, can't remember exactly how it worked now, but because all the groups work differently, but it was a case of being one of the last few to be picked to go forward as a finalist anyway. And that was just really gratifying and actually made me think maybe you're not terrible. And, it just knocked the imposter syndrome back a little bit. Because I do struggle with that quite a lot. I make a lot of excuses for my books all the time, which I shouldn't. I should just be proud of what I've done. And and it certainly gave me that little bit more visibility. And I think it gives you a little bit more credibility as well, which is nice. But no, the community is the main thing. And I think what Mark Lawrence has done by creating this for us all, it's given us an incredible platform and an opportunity. So I'm very grateful to have been involved in it. And I was lucky enough each time to kind of not have to wait too long to find out what was happening and to be kindly and swiftly dealt my fate. Whereas it can be quite a torturous process, I think. We'll see next time I enter.
Yeah, I mean, Jacob's covered a lot of it. Like, it's definitely that community aspect of it is really, really important. As I mentioned before, if you're an author on your own, it's actually really, really hard. And so, making those connections, finding out who's part of your tribe, I suppose, was probably actually the real benefit of it. And I suppose for me, it probably was the difference between having an audience and not. I've got the stats. I can definitely tell. Making finalists, it moved me not to mega stardom. I think people need to understand that. It moved me into people have heard of you, and that actually is the most difficult part of this whole business. It's not actually the quality of your writing. Well, the quality of your writing is really, really important, guys. Yeah, so just to be clear, quality of writing is important, but lots and lots of people write really, really good stuff, and it's about finding readers, taking a chance, and picking up a book by a new author. That is actually the challenge with a lot of this stuff. So for me, I think, I'm eternally grateful to SPFBO because it gave me that audience at a low level that's gradually started to improve over the last sort of couple of years, really. I think it is an amazing platform for independent fantasy fiction writers. It really is. You can see now just how much the trad industry basically takes notice of what happens in SPFBO. Perhaps didn't do it in 2015, certainly does it by 2020, 2021. And so that just shows, I think, the sort of the level of the competition and what it can do for you. So I would say I had a major wobble about actually entering. That imposter syndrome it's a real why do we I don't know why every single author I speak to has imposter syndrome. I don't know why that is, but we do. And you just need to take a positive step forward and roll those dice and see what happens. It might mean a cut, it might mean semis, it might mean finals, who knows. But what I do know is if every time you take a positive step and do something, it's infinitely preferable to wishing you'd done something 10 years ago and those kind of things. So for me, it was absolutely life-changing, actually, I must admit. And both from a people point of view and a career point of view. So, if you're thinking about it and not sure, definitely do it because you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And I think it'd be really interesting to see what happens in, we're obviously right now it's SPFBO 8. It's only a few reviews left to land now. It's getting quite tight, isn't it? Obviously, you're involved in that PL, aren't you? So it's you probably know more than I do what's about to happen. But obviously, it's also people are also gearing up for SPFBO 9, aren't they, as well? So it's there's lots all to play for at this point, I think.
Yeah, it's the strangest thing with that competition and now having been on both sides, having been a participant and now being a blogger, essentially one of the judges, it is so intense and the hype around this competition, it gets almost surreal, doesn't it? At some points, it's really like you're living in another world when you, especially if you're one of the writers, waiting for your fate, as Jacob indicated, and then all the attention of the self-published fantasy world seems like it's on you while you're waiting, and then the weirdest thing is that okay, and then you move forward, and the semifinals are chosen, and then okay, and then everybody's just waiting to see who's going to move forward to that 10, and then the 10 are selected, and then all the spotlight is on them, and it is glaring. I mean, it's, and Tim, you've lived through it. Out of the four of us here, you're the one that's lived through the actual final spotlight. Jacob, you lived through the final spotlight. People watch that scoreboard constantly, right? Like their favorite sports match, to see where everyone is, and people guess, and they wager even on who's going to make what, and what this score will mean, and what this blogger score, who will this blogger like this book because they don't tend to like this sort of book. There's so much analysis, and it's really, and it's all positive, and it all does so much for the self-published fantasy community. And one thing we talked about, though, I believe when Tim and Holly were on last time, is but you do have to mind your mental health, because it is very intense, and you can you can get lost in the whole thing. And then the funny thing is, okay, and then there's all that scrutiny, and then the winner is chosen, and then it starts all over, right? Yeah. And then it's just churning you right on to next year. Who are the favorites, and who are the anticipated finalists and semifinalists, and the hype just rebuilds. But the beauty of it is, for Jacob and Tim, flags fly forever. So you will always have that semifinalist and finalist tag that you can go, hey, imposter syndrome, go away, right? So, but it is a unique contest that way. That very unique.
I've said to Jacob before, I think back-to-back semis is actually every bit as impressive as making finals, because that's two different blogs both saying this is a book of quality straight away. So again, imposter syndrome can do one, basically.
Just remind yourself of that sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard, isn't it? It feels like a long time ago, but it really isn't actually. And it's like I say, I think it's just the relentless nature of the competition always being live. It feels we're talking here about sort of actually quite significant literary achievements, because that's two different bloggers, both very different tastes, both saying, well, you know what, there's something in that. And I think it's really important to remember it. I'm very aware. I think my book was probably more Marmite, if anything. Take love it or hate it. I think if I could have ended up in a different blog at an earlier stage, it would have bounced out, and I think that would have been that. And that's kind of, I think in some ways, the arbitrary nature of the competition's part of its charm, isn't it? That there are always shocks, there are always always surprises, and then there are the sort of rank outsiders that suddenly come into the frame. So it's kind of got everything in a way, hasn't it, in terms of all the drama and the unpredictability side of it.
It is somewhat like a sports competition in that nature, in the way that the early stages, there's a degree of randomness about who you get put up against, and that kind of thing, which makes it all the more exciting, really, seeing like, who are you going to be in a group with, what's the path to victory, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a bit like Survivor almost too. It's just a very unique competition that and I find it fascinating. It is marvelous, but that kind of leads me to another question, which is for all of you, Steve especially included. And we've been talking a lot about imposter syndrome, and I think we all suffered, not just writers, creatives. Steve, you're a YouTuber, a blogger, a reviewer. I mean, you and I think what I'm finding now is that, and it's all relative. Again, it's what you think and where you think you are, but a little bit of perceived success is dangerous, right? It's almost even worse than not having anything, right? Like, Steve, when you had 0 subscribers or 10 subscribers, it's a lot different from having 1K, 2K subscribers. But yet, you're in this weird spot. Jacob and Tim, you've won, these awards, and you've done this and that, but you're not someone who no one has read. But yet you feel, okay, well, I'm looking up to where I want to be, and it's a weird spot, right? That you're not sure where you fall and how, you're striving for continuous improvement. I think all of us would agree that, the main thing is the craft, whether that's being a book tour like Steve, or whether that's writing. Like that's whatever you're doing, you're trying to continue to improve. That's the real goal. It's not so much about sales. Those are things you love and things that make you feel good, but you know, you want more. But you know, and it's not about, you know, how many reviews you have on Amazon or Goodreads or how many subs you have, but those things are important and they mean something. So, you know, what is it? How do you assess your success where you are and where you're going, and how do you feel about where you've been and the path? Like, is it something consciously that you're figuring out, okay, well, like, how do you feel about all that? It's you, Steve. Looking at you too, my friend.
Steve, give us a break. You give us your view.
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a loaded question. To be honest, I think about deleting my channel all the time. I think about, yeah, all the time. I Google it. How do you delete a YouTube channel? I go there and open the window and have my finger on the button and think I have no business doing this. And I think about that all the time. But then I think about people like PL and Tim and Jacob and Taylor and all the people I hang out with and all the fun I have and all the great people I get to interact with. I'm like, well, I guess I'll let it ride for a little bit longer.
So what's the thought that makes you want to do that?
I don't know. I just think sometimes I just think like, you know, I don't know, like nobody cares kind of thing. Like I think, and it sounds kind of silly to say that, but I don't know. It crosses my mind from time to time. Like, I don't know, like, you know, you have like for us, it's, you know, you create content and you try and make it entertaining and helpful and something people want to watch. And just some of the thing I'm not very good at it. Like, why am I bothering? Why am I wasting my time? But like I said, then I remember like all the great people, like even just people who comment, like Helena or, you know, there's a ton of people who just comment that I've never met or I've never seen, but I still interact with them all the time. So that's what keeps me around, is those interactions is what keeps me going. Because without it, then if I had, you know, 10 views and everything, and I'm like trying, it's like, okay, maybe I should do something else. But I'm pretty fortunate to have lots of supportive people around me. So that's really what keeps me going.
I'd never even thought about it's. You just made me stop and think. You know, bloggers and that side of things actually have. You know, that imposter syndrome is still quite insidious, isn't it? Actually, I'm amazed that that's you're having that sort of those kind of thoughts. When I think this is obviously a quality channel in terms of what you're putting out and, you know, the platform you're giving to other people. Really, so it's. I think it. Yeah, there's a psychological thing. Element to all this sort of creative endeavor, isn't there? Where it's very easy to listen to that voice that says you're not good enough, you should stop doing something. And obviously, if we all did that, there would be no art, there would be no blogs, there would be no, you know, platforms for these kind of. And actually, we wouldn't have met each other either. So I think it is very important to remember that, you know, a little bit of self-doubt is useful, isn't it? Because I think, you know, the reverse is also quite dangerous. If you think you're a genius, that can be quite off-putting. But I think it comes back a bit to what I was saying before about SPFBO. If you're positive and take a positive step, your life will always be richer than if you don't take that step. And I think, you know, whether you choose to do that in the medium of blogging or, you know, on YouTube or whatever, or through writing, those kind of things, if you don't, your life will just be smaller if you don't do those things. And so, you know, I think what I would just say is don't listen to that voice. You know, obviously, if you're absolutely terrible at something, it probably doesn't really matter. You know, actually, even then, you know, if you're enjoying doing something, you're giving other people pleasure and making those connections, you know, why the hell shouldn't you? So I think, for me, you know, I'm quite keen to stamp on the head of imposter syndrome, actually, because I think it just makes all the world poorer and us poorer for it as well, because we all lose out when people choose to retreat like that, don't we?
That's very true.
I think the longer you do it, the easier it is to put the highs and lows into perspective. Because I definitely felt the lows as proper despair at various points in the earlier books, but now I kind of recognize that as actually, I need to stop trying to force the ideas out. I need to go to sleep. And when I wake up in the morning, I will have all the answers for it. Or I'll go and do the washing up, or I'll go and do something else. And, you know, that just letting it stew, cogitating on things quietly, you know, really makes a hell of a difference. And I think I did a lot of thinking during the pandemic, actually, because it was a time of reflection, really, where you started thinking, well, life's not seeming quite as secure and long as it did a little while ago. And I thought, well, what happens if I just drop off the face of the planet when I'm 2 books into a trilogy? You know, what's my grand legacy and all this kind of thing. And I started thinking about why do we do this anyway? And you know, I had discussions with Tim, with PL, and with other you know, with other Marmites, etc., about, you know, what is storytelling and why is it so important to humans? And you know, I basically ended up coming back down to feeling like, apart from anything, it feels like my life's purpose to produce this stuff. It doesn't have to meet any kind of objective standard or anything. I put love in it, I put truth in it, and I put it out there in the hope that other people will enjoy it. And if they enjoy it enough, hopefully at some point enough sales will come that will enable me to do what I love even more and just keep that cycle turning. It's not about trying to get rich or anything. It's about trying to, I mean, this is just who I am. It's always who I've been. I want to be a writer and I want to do it as much as I possibly can and live it. And that's the only reason that the sales matter to me. Having said that, when I first started out, it was before indie publishing was really a thing. And I thought, well, you just, hello.
Hello.
Hi, so sorry for being late. Don't let me interrupt what you're saying. I'll jump in after.
Yeah, I was just going to say, back at the start, it was all about, well, I need to get an agent and then I'll be Stephen King. You know, you just assume that that's the process. And you forget how many thousands and thousands of people are out there working their butts off trying to make this happen. And even when they do get published, you know, they still keep their jobs up. Tolkien never gave his job up. C.S. Lewis never gave his job up. You know, it's a real privilege to be able to do that. One that I haven't earned yet. But I think, yeah, that imposter syndrome, it touches everybody at every level, and we all need to just, you know, take it with a pinch of salt and just keep striving.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, I don't think imposter syndrome ever goes away, but at the same time, I think I'm going to get a bit emotional. I feel complete doing this. It took me a long time to realize, and I think it took me a long time to realize I was good enough to actually do this. So it used to be a private endeavor. And then, you know, getting agented was a big moment for me. But actually, it made me also realize, as Jacob just says, actually, it's, you know, selling a book is almost irrelevant. It's more about actually creating something you feel passionate about. And I think for a long time, I was unsure whether this, I don't know, I'm starting to ramble. Maybe it's getting too late in the UK. I was unsure whether I enjoyed it or not. Does that make any sense at all? I think
absolutely.
I was battling. I thought I want to try this, but I didn't really know how to go about. I think I was basically trying to learn how to play the grand piano or something entirely by ear, and it turns out it's really hard to do that. And I think writing is very, very similar. That, you know, there's a lot of craft and a lot of skill that goes into it. If you try and learn it all entirely by yourself, it's going to take a heck of a long time to bash those keys in the right order to bring out anything that's remotely, you know, approaching a melody. It wasn't really until I think, you know, John sort of said, yes, I'm interested in your work. And I worked with him as an agent and also as an editor, that I started to understand actually what the craft was and what makes the difference between a good book and a book that's excellent and a book that's outstanding. And getting, and realize actually, God, outstanding is quite high up, you know, compared to where I am. But I think when that clicked, it then suddenly felt, now I know what I'm doing. And then I suddenly felt very different about it. I suddenly felt complete as an author. I thought, this is what I should be doing. It was really quite a profound moment for me. And I feel a very different person now than maybe if you asked me what I wanted to do in my life 10 years ago. The answer would have been very, very different. This would have been a private hobby. I wouldn't have had any contact with any other writers or any bloggers or any readers, quite frankly. It was a completely different existence. It was something very, very private and intimate. Now, it's much more about actually, I believe what I'm doing is good, but also I understand more about the importance of actually sharing your work. There's no point your art dying inside of you, is there? That's one of my sort of driving forces as I get older, quite honestly. I want my art to be shared and I want people to be able to access it and appreciate it, really. And I think every time you do that, your imposter syndrome, I think, takes a step back because you're getting more positive reinforcement. You're finding more of the readers. You find more. Not everyone is going to enjoy everything you write, are they? But there's always a chunk of people that obviously will, and you need to be reaching them and engaging with them. I think there's a lot of crossover between me and Jacob in terms of what we write. Definitely, we enjoy each other's writing, and the same with UPL. Definitely, we've got a crossover. But we also have our own very specific markets of people that would hate me but love Jacob, or hate me but love UPL. So it's getting into that sort of stage of things that I think is quite important. That's the fun of it. You find someone you connect with, and think, right, that's why I'm doing this, and it just changes how you feel about what you're doing, really. But I don't know whether that made any sense at all.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Definitely makes sense.
Definitely. I
love
go
that
ahead,
quote. I'm just saying, I love the quote. There's no point in your art dying inside you. I mean, that's important to remember. I think it goes for anyone who makes any creative endeavor. Right?
Yeah. And
not everyone's going to like it, but go ahead, PL.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, sorry. No, I'm sorry, Taylor. I don't want to interrupt you. I want to quickly say that, Steve, YouTube and the writing community would be a lesser place if you weren't there. So same goes for Taylor, obviously. YouTube would be a lesser place if you weren't there. And we are so grateful that you're here. And all you do to create a space for others, including with your forum and all the things you do. I mean, the hardest thing about imposter syndrome is you don't realize what kind of impact you have sometimes, positive, negative. And no matter how many subs you feel, I saw a post by, I haven't responded to you, there's a video from Patrick Leo, who is probably one of the biggest, in the booktube, fantasy space. I would argue he's one of the biggest ones. He was saying something about, channel hasn't done as well recently. I'm thinking, this is Patrick Leo, his channel is like one of the, so it doesn't matter what level you are, what perceived level you are, it can affect anybody. I'm sure Brandon Sanderson has moments of, oh wow, this, I could do better, right? And I think, for booktubers like Steve and Taylor, for writers like Jacob, Tim, and I, so much of it is about our own insecurities and our own sometimes even misunderstanding and misappreciation for where we are in our space. Because as Tim said, even just the act of putting together a video and putting it on YouTube or writing a book and publishing it, that in itself is a victory. And we forget that, right? That, and it's a huge victory, and that there are people out there right now who would do anything to be where we are, the five of us. They would do anything. They're watching and says, oh my gosh, this discussion, they would do anything to be part of it, right? And that's something that we all forget, because it's easy to forget because we're here and we're looking at other people and the success of other booktubers. Maybe for Taylor and Steve, you're looking at the Petricks. And for Jacob and Tim and I, we're looking at the John Gwynns and the you name it, right? And saying, oh, look at their success. But it can really get in your head. But we have to remember, how well we're doing just by doing the act, putting aside any commercial success or monetization or how much you're getting as a YouTuber, how many subs you have or whatever. It's so much of it is, yeah, exactly, right? But you don't do it for that. You do it, Steve, because you love it, right? The people. What you do, and I let me tell you quickly how much it can get into your head. I'll be honest here. There was something on Twitter the other day where one of the big bloggers was putting up, some of who are some of your favorite reviewers and blah blah. And I was humbled that in a lot of the tweets people were mentioning me, and I was like, me, I'm nobody. I'm, what I mean? I'm looking up at the Mahirs and all these people saying, I should not be in this, and mentioned that. But I started thinking, was that me? They think I suck as a writer. These are the things that get in your head. You know what I mean? And you know what I'm talking about. And you have to take a step back and say, wait a minute, hold on a second. I can't even take the compliment. I can't even be happy that someone's mentioning me, that they think I'm a good reviewer. It has nothing to do with whether I'm a good writer, but those are the things that you do, right? And I think that insecurity, that imposter syndrome, the more we, as Jacob said aptly, the more you do, the longer you're in it, the more you can chase it away, and the more you be more rational about some of these thoughts that get in your head. And with the support of all your friends and your colleagues, people like you, that keep me going, you know, and we do give that back to each other. I think that's how we banish it. So
it's funny you should mention about Brandon Sanderson. I watched a lot of his online lectures, and he mentioned at one point that, you know, there's something peculiar about being a writer, in that they'll say, "Oh, you're writing a book. You know, is it been published yet?" Or "Don't give up your day job," or something along those lines. But if you were to go out and just play basketball on a Thursday night, nobody comes to the court and they're like, "Haven't been picked up yet. You know, haven't been drafted. Like, don't give up your day job. Why are you playing basketball?" There's almost like an added pressure to writing a book that kind of suggests that you must be commercially successful for it to be a worthwhile pursuit. And I just don't. I don't think that is the case. That's a lovely side effect, isn't it? If you can capture the right kind of luck, really, and all the prerequisite hard work and talent and whatever else.
Yeah, it's all those things coming together, isn't it? Absolutely. As you know, I think it's very, very dangerous to give for your self-worth to be based upon how other people are doing.
Yeah.
So again, if you're trying to tackle imposter syndrome, for me, that's a crucial thing, that you've got to break that habit really early, because there's always going to be somebody that's doing better than me. Quite a lot of people, I imagine, actually. But if you say, "Why am I not that person?" you're fundamentally missing the point. That the point is, are you happy doing what you are doing? Are you happy writing what you're writing or creating what you're creating? And they're you know, you'll always be looking up. You know, and so you had mentioned earlier on, Pip, some people were killed to be us as well, and it's really important to remember that as well. So actually, for me, the only measure of, you know, I think the only part, the origin of this question about half an hour ago was something along the lines of, you know, what is success? And I think it's actually success is personal happiness and fulfillment. Actually, it isn't any of those other things that you think. Anything that you can measure is probably not actually a measure of success. It's actually about how you feel about what you are creating and what you are doing that is fundamentally the most important thing. Yeah, obviously, you know, trying to build a career as a writer, you know, you want to be selling more books this year than last year. But I have not decided to try and outsell Brandon Sanderson, because that would be lunacy. It's what I want to see is that gradual growth and development in my writing career. So the only person I'm really competing with in that sense really is, am I doing better than last year? If the answer is yes, happy days. If the answer is no, well, you know, am I still happy doing what I'm doing? That as long as those two questions, one of those is a yes, I'll be happy till whenever I shuffle off this mortal coil, basically. I think it's really dangerous to be thinking you must be somebody else or you must beat somebody else, because you won't do it actually, and you'll be focusing on the wrong thing. What you won't be focusing on is your art and your craft and producing the next thing that's really, really good. So, you know, I think again, mindset is really, really important for this sort of thing, for the long haul in particular.
Mm. And on that note, you can't even really judge when you're successful. Like, if Scott Fitzgerald died before Great Gatsby became a big commercial success, and J.M. Barrie, people tend to only remember him for Peter Pan, and that was his work for children, and he was a famous novelist at the time. Like, how do you even know when you've become successful? It's a very elusive thing.
You guys may have discussed this before I came on, so feel free to tell me if you did. But I think something that really is impacting this nowadays is the internet, because we have so many people to compare ourselves to now. You know, we aren't built for this, and I don't think we know how to deal with it yet. We're built for small groups, and to be able to compare yourself to have the news of how successful someone is all the way across the world is something that we didn't really have access to, especially at the speed and the frequency that we do now. So to every day, of course, if they're your friends and everything, it's wonderful, but there are so many numbers to compare yourself to now. It's overwhelming, you know?
Yeah, you didn't used to go into a bookshop and be able to see a little ticker that told you were number 2 million in the bestsellers rank,
right?
in Amazon or something. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. And you didn't see automatically your friend just put up a tweet about they got a best-selling tag and in this category, and then another. It's Taylor. Taylor's right too, and I think, I almost feel like, I know for me and Jacob and I share similar careers. You see people at what a lot of us would feel at their down moments, to some of their worst moments as humans, and I know I often felt, and I've talked to Jacob about this, that, but by the grace of God, go I, that, it could be any one of us if things turn a certain way. And I think with creatives, with bloggers and booktubers and writers, we also have to remember, the difference between what we even qualify as success and what we qualify as not being successful is a very, very slim margin, right? And it doesn't take much for things to. What we think would take for us to rocket up to be Brandon Sanders, so as Tim would say, we go, there's absolutely no way. But we don't know that, because what was Brandon Sanderson thinking when he was 2 or 3 books in? Do you think he would be what he is today? Probably not. He probably hoped for that, but so does every writer, right? So, I think I'm much more cognizant of that, especially as I get into that point of my life where, you have more years behind than ahead, and you pass the 50 barrier, and you go, okay, what's, like, as Jacob talked about, what's my legacy? Where am I going? What do I want to leave on this earth? And for a lot of us, it's this. It's this podcast we do. It's this book we write. It's, it's behind me. That's what you're leaving. You're leaving these things, right, for other people to read and look at. And I think that's becoming much more important to me as I progress in my writing journey, is knowing that I've left something good, bad, or different for someone else to look at, long after I'm gone, and go, hey, okay, well, this was interesting. I read it, and, and that's enough, because there's still a piece of you there. Right. And I think that's fascinating. There's still a piece of J.R. Tolkien out there all over the place. Right. Someone's reading him right now. Right. He's long gone, but someone's reading him, and someone's commenting him on it. Someone's writing a review of his books, and someone's doing a comparative analysis. And, that is, I think, what we're all somewhere innately striving for, is that bit of immortality, that bit of leaving something, for others to look at. So.
What about you, Taylor? How do you deal with imposter syndrome?
Well,
It's loaded, yeah.
I would say I've had to draw strict boundaries for myself, because you have to realize that the world is gonna do what it's gonna do, and the only thing you control it is what you do. So when I start to feel that creep up, I specifically set new boundaries for myself to log off. So if I feel myself starting to compare myself to my friends, which is like the worst situation ever, when I start feeling that feeling creep up, I decide, okay, in the morning, no more Twitter, for this amount of time. That's not the first thing I'm going to look at today. Or I tell myself I'm only going to engage with my dashboard between this time and this time during the day, no checking it. And I think that having those boundaries for checking those numbers really helps, because it allows me to ground myself in basically what Tim was saying, in my daily life, and actually reading the books that I make content about, rather than looking at the results of the content I've already made. So I think for me, making those strict boundaries and following them is really, really helpful, because once you start to focus on your daily life, you realize it's not that big of a deal. It's really, really not. And, being able to get up, today is my husband's birthday. So being able to get up and just have those small moments with people, like, that's way more important than my numbers on the dashboard. So I think I just what I do is I remind myself of that. I do what I need to do to kind of change that thought process. Sometimes it takes a week or two where I'm not available as much online. I'm sure everyone notices sometimes, people disappear for a little while and then come back. When I do that, I'm probably doing a reset in that way.
Happy birthday to Hayato, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy birthday wishes.
Poor thing. He's already at work, but but I'll send him those thoughts.
Please.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's what I do. Basically, check out for a little while. touch grass, as Gen Z would say.
That's
think
a heavy topic.
Yeah, it's funny. I will add the final note on this topic for me, anyways. Please feel free to spend. We actually have in our Marmite group, we actually have different channels, and we have one channel specifically that we can kind of celebrate our successes and boost each other up and give each other a pat on the back, and it helps. I know it's helped me. I'm guessing that Jacob and Tim feel the same. That and the shared commiseration, like I talked about too, when things are going well, that you can kind of get a little boost and a pat on the back or a kick in the butt to get you going again. Like that really, that shared, that communal, thing that really has helped me a lot. So, and
it's more proactive than that as well, isn't it? It's not just a pat on the back. It's you can actually say, I'm down in the pit right now, guys. Like, can you show me some handholds on the way back up? And just a few kind words and, helping you center yourself a little bit. It's really huge to be around other people who do what you do, because I don't know that many people who do what I do in the real world in my vicinity. And it's nice to actually reach out and know that there are, people out there that understand.
Yeah, and I do that on the other side with the booktube. I'm not officially booktuber, but I do that with Steve and Taylor when we talk about all kinds of things on that side. And it's sometimes you have those days, right? And they're always there for me, and I want to be there for them, and that's huge. And we have all these circles that help lift us up, and that's why I love this space. One of the reasons why I really love this space is I get a lot out of it. Right, like Steve was saying, you realize just how much you get out of it, and that stops you, I think, ultimately from just disappearing and throwing in the towel, and so for sure.
Yeah. Hard to transition from there. Did you have something else, Taylor?
No, go for it.
Oh, okay. Now the blue black and blue collar reader has a question. Curious to know, when was the decision made to become writers? Was this something you decided early on in life?
Well, I'm not a writer, so I can't answer that one.
One of us three guys. That's what she's saying. I'll start because I kind of talked a little bit about this earlier on. I think no one sort of says, you're a writer. That isn't what happens. I think it's like any craft. You choose something and you happen to be good at it or not. So I was, I've always been naturally good with words. I'm a lawyer, but is my profession. So that was my background. So obviously that's requires quite a good sort of, verbal and, literary, writing dexterity and so on. But, writing creative is something different to that. So that's just a platform. And I think for me, I just wanted to see if I could. So I sort of wrote for pleasure, wrote a diary, sort of like for pleasure, and just thought that, well, this is fun. But I just wanted to know if I could do it, and found out I could. I could easily have got bored and done something very different. So it wasn't like at 3 I knew I'd be a writer. I was 32 when I first started actually creatively writing, as I sort of think of it today. So yeah, I suppose for me it was more actually just falling into it and finding out I was good at it, and then slowly it changed from can I do it to I can't stop doing it. So I don't know, that sounds a little bit obsessional, and there probably is an element of that in there, but when you discover you're good at something and you get pleasure out of it, you're obviously going to carry on doing it. So for me it was more of a gradual discovery, I think, rather than like a light bulb. I must be doing this.
Jacob?
I don't remember a time where I didn't want to be a writer, and I think it probably comes mostly from my parents, in the sense that, as I say, they were both journalists, so they prized writing. My mum taught me to touch type in the dark at one point when I was quite young. Sorry,
just come back, circle around on that again. Yeah. She did what?
I don't know if I've made that up now, I'm going to stick with it.
I really want it to be true, so just make it up, pretend it's true.
I'm pretty sure it did happen that way. I remember her saying, touch typing will allow you to, without, you'll be able to write without even having to look at the keyboard. And she said, and she demonstrated that she could do it in the dark. And I'm pretty sure that she got me doing it at various points as well. And it has been absolutely, invaluable. So she took some time off from being a journalist while we were little. And she used to write stories for children's comics, just short stories, to try and bring in a bit of extra money. And I remember, I think it all became quite romanticized for me, really. I remember going to sleep at night to the sound of her typewriter down the hall. You could always hear the keys clacking. So she'd be working her butt off looking after us all day. And then at night she was working on things. I don't know how long for or anything, but, and she was getting, published in little publications and things, lots of short stories. And they had books everywhere. And I've got extremely fond memories of parents reading to me, and it's something that a love of the same authors is something I bonded over with my dad as well, whereas it might usually be football or something. Like, we both appreciated Stephen King, and that was something that we always had together. And I just think I've always had a fascination with character and people and interactions. I played with my toys like my stories now. They all had back histories, and there were plots, and it was always serialized, and it was never just random. So story's just always been really, really important to me.
Yeah, I think as a little kid, I wasn't that mischievous, but whenever I used to get in trouble, what I used to do is write stories to kind of entertain and distract the adults. Hey, look at this! I wrote this cool story, and they'd laugh, and and then I think eventually some of them, obviously your parents and your family are biased. They'd be like, hey, you have some talent there. We should do something with that. And I, of course, I didn't take it seriously back then, but I think that was the beginning of my drive to do it. And it just got stronger as I went on. And, I just wasn't in the headspace, mentally, emotionally, psychologically to do it for most of my adult life and the career that I had. But as you get older, you become kind of an empty nester, and, you have the support of your wife, and, so now published author in my 50s. So, but yeah, I did want to do it early, but I didn't actually do it till much later. So, but that's all good as long as I got to do it, right? So, I'm happy with that.
I fancied myself able to maybe write a little bit when I was in middle school, and I'm so glad I never uploaded those to Wattpad or any of those websites. They are somewhere in a journal, and they should just die there. I gave up on that real quick.
Do you want to not mention about Happy St. Patrick's Day for anyone celebrating? Bailey Books and Sport, enjoying Hollow Bones, 60% on my Kindle.
It's a great book.
Yeah, and Helena being greedy with another question. Please, I asked the authors, did you do creative writing degrees, courses, and or read creative writing books before writing your novels, or did you just jump in? And if you did, what was most helpful?
I made the conscious decision. I knew I wanted to be a writer, but the landscape at the time was not one where you could make a living out of it, guaranteed for sure. So I went all in on academics, really, and chose a day job on the basis that I would continue to work on writing until I could replace it. I never did a creative writing degree or course or anything. I read on writing maybe twice a year for 20 years or something like that. Recently, I still like to immerse myself in it. I listen to a podcast on Spotify called Writer's Routine, which is literally just so many writers talking through their workspace and how they spend their day, how they go about it. I've listened to all of Brandon Sanderson's lectures. I'm going through Ernest Hemingway's like quotes about writing, and also Ray Bradbury's and Zen and the Art of Writing, something like that. So I always try and immerse myself in it, particularly when I'm trying to shove myself into a writing phase. But no, nothing formal. I guess it's been kind of like teaching yourself guitar, really.
Yeah, I'm very similar. So I've not got any kind of a writing qualification other than just the desire to do it, I suppose, really. So yeah, I just simply thought how hard can it be? That was how naive and stupid I was back then. It can't be difficult to write a novel. And it turns out it actually is quite difficult to write a novel. So I've actually sort of embraced that sort of, what's available to me. I've sort of embraced later in life as I've realised actually quite how difficult, like I said before, that difference between good, excellent, outstanding. How do I get to that? Actually, I think you do need to do some research. So I think my grounding when I was younger was probably just a house full of books and reading and having a love of reading. That's obviously really important. I think, great to do a creative writing degree or course if you want to. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think actually a love of books is one of the fundamental things you really need, actually. Then I think as I got to the point of wanting to develop my craft, that's when I actually started reading more widely about some of the stuff that's available. So Stephen King, I'm going to hash this now, about writing, on writing. Book Stephen King wrote on writing, that was actually a bit of a light bulb moment, because it made me understand actually there's a real craft to this underneath. It isn't just what I was doing, which was just hammering it out and having a go. You actually need to think about what you're doing, and it makes a massive difference to the output on the page if you do. Another one that's very good, it's on writing. It's a book called On Writing. It's by Gareth L. Powell, who's the sci-fi writer, if you heard of him. I think I've got the slimline edition, but he's recently bulked it out and I think done a second edition, which has got a bit more material in. But again, I found that Stephen King's was very technical, and I found Gareth's really good, but I found Gareth's was much more the mindset. Again, going back to the topic about imposter, all those sort of things about how you deal with imposter syndrome and positive mental attitude and all those kind of things, really helpful grounding. So if I'd say if you had both those books as something as a starting author and read those, they give you some really good tips and a really good grounding in actually how to go about tackling this, really.
Yeah, I'm the same. No formal education. Funny you mentioned Gareth Powell. You may see him on the show at some point, Tim. Cool. So, but yeah, the no formal education. My background was, English and history, and that's what I took in school. And I don't have any formal training in writing. And like Tim, a lot of it is reading. You see all the books. I'm an avid, voracious reader, and you see all the books behind me. Sorry, and I think I've learned so much from reading, especially the books of my colleagues like Jacob and Tim, and seeing the things that they do and how they handle certain technical aspects of writing. And I'm learning a lot as a blogger and reviewing books. I think that's really made a difference because of how I'm having to analyze books now, especially judging books for SPFBO. I think that's making a huge difference, and seeing some of the pitfalls that I make as a writer and trying to avoid those, and maybe seeing choices that writers make. Okay, why did they make that particular choice? I'm doing a lot more of that now than before. So yeah, but no formal training either.
This is a completely different topic, but I realized just now that Stephen PL did not get the flannel note. They didn't get the memo. The three of us are all matching. I just realized that one.
Nobody told me. I didn't know.
And nobody told me flannel, man. You guys left
me. We'll add you to the flannel chat.
Just realized. Yeah. I think, just like with any art, though, part of it is learning as you go. Like, you can't learn until you do it. You just can't. Drawing, any kind of art, I would say, any type of creation, you have to make first before you get it, which is kind of scary because you just have to start. Tim, you mentioned earlier that it was a private endeavor for a while, and I think a lot of people start that way. Video creation is interesting because there are some people on YouTube who used to make home videos and stuff, and they then developed into sharing that to with people. But I think a lot of booktubers just pick up a camera for the first time and they're like, I hope you like it, and just put it out. So I think video creation is a bit unique in that way because it inherently involves sharing. But in general, I would say art is just, you kind of have to trial by fire and learn as you go. There's really no way to just intellectually prepare for it,
Yeah.
I don't know, Steve. What do you think, Steve, about because I always say, and I'm an aspiring booktuber now. I look at Steve and Tara, they're pros, right? Like everything they do is so professional, and the effects, all the stuff that they do, I'm just like, okay, I'll never be able to do that. But yeah. So what do you think, Steve, about like it's yeah, so
Yeah, I think Taylor makes a good point. Is that you just have to do it and just try, because there's always things that you'll experience along the way that you didn't anticipate running into. Whether you always run into problems or things you didn't realize that went into whatever art form it is, and just surround yourself with people who are passionate about it, who want to, and you lift yourselves up. Like you had mentioned earlier about the chat with having other people in your chat about, hey, I'm having kind of a rough day, or what. That is huge to have people who are in the same position, because other people outside who don't know they can't relate to the challenges you face. They can tell you it'll be okay, but it's just not the same. It's like, yeah, but you don't get it. But when you have people that are doing the same thing and they're there to help lift you back up, it makes a huge difference. It's a world of a difference.
This kind of reminds me, this is outside of the book sphere, but I'm kind of part of the restaurant scene here in Fukuoka, and I have a friend who recently opened a new restaurant, or he opened a place that is basically for takeout. So he got the place he could afford, which is very small. He has just enough room for his pizza ovens. He's from Italy, so he's selling some Roman pizza and this like arancini, like rice ball. And it has a market here for sure, because not a lot of people make it, but it's scary to start. And as someone who has started and failed at a couple different things in the restaurant business with my husband over the years, I went to see him, yesterday actually, and we were talking, just like Steve said, talking to someone who gets it, So he was explaining how he had to ride home on his bicycle at like 2 a.m. with the leftovers, and knew he had to get up early to do it all again. I'm like, oh my God, I know, I get it. And having to change the recipe, even though you had your heart set on this, it's actually not working. So you're going to have to change it to this, or marketing. Every endeavor comes with a unique set of challenges, and talking to someone who actually gets the minutia of that makes a huge difference, I think, because he seemed to feel much better being able to complain to someone who's like, yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
I think one of the hardest things about being creative, whether you're a booktuber or a writer, is always that balance between not being tone deaf to feedback, or not looking at things that will work or that are popular, or they'll sell you books or get you more subs, or get you more likes. I think Taylor talked a lot about, as it talked about the passive things, like, okay, well, this kind of video gets me 1,000 views and this doesn't. But I really think that this type of video is important, right? And it's the same with writing. If I write more battle scenes and more sex scenes, maybe I'll write some more books. But that's not, you know what I mean? Like, that perhaps may not be what you're looking to do with your own writing. And I think a lot of it is just that balance between you want, in order for what you're doing to get out there to the widest audience possible, right? You have to appeal to people, and you have to appeal to certain tastes, but yet you want to do your own thing, right? And that's what I find is it gets harder as a writer, is that, if someone says, for example, oh, PL, I love your battle scenes. I'm like, yeah, okay, they're okay, but that's part of my book, but it's not the main focus for me. But yet you want to do that because that's helping you gain that audience to look at the other aspects of your work that you feel are so valuable. Or if, Stephen Taylor, people like my vlogs, people love Taylor's vlogs, or, Steve's reviews or something like that, right? But this isn't as popular. It's tough when, okay, I really want to put out more of this, but, will it get the views, right? So I think that's what we balance to as creators. That's a big thing. So,
but again, that's a little bit of, are you chasing the thing that matters? You really do need to. I think we can spend an awful lot of time wasting our lives trying to please people. And if you don't please yourself and don't do what you want to do, it's all for nothing, isn't it? And again, as you get older, I think you sometimes, I probably care less about what other people think now at my age than I did, say, 20 years ago, for example, because you realize life is fleeting. life is short. Things are unexpected. Stuff can always happen. Are you going to look back on things with regrets? You do think of all these fairly profound things as you get older, and for me, it's not. Yeah, you've got to produce something you fundamentally love, because it's not about me pushing my book, for example, into the Brandon Sanderson market, say, with a hard magic system or whatever the hell that even means. Mine's like a gossamer magic system. I'm not even sure it is a magic system. It's just stuff I've made up that makes no sense under any rational analysis whatsoever. But that's fine, because I'm not chasing the Brandon Sanderson hard magic crowd. I'm chasing the character-driven fantasy crowd over here. So it's just really important to do what you love is the most important single thing of all. And then everything else will follow from that. If you chase, again, you're starting to compare your success and your value and your worth with other people. And that, again, it's fundamentally counterproductive. I'm very happy with writing what I'm writing. I'm not even sure I don't even know what it is. Does that make any sense? I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody else, but I write something. I think, well, I shall write this. And I don't really know then sort of what happens over the course of the next 12 months. But then something emerges and it's like, fantastic, it's a book. But I couldn't really explain a process for what it is or how the tone or the voice comes out of it. It simply is just, it feels natural and it feels that's what it should be. And I think if you get into that mindset, you produce something much better than if it should be like this. It should sell as well as that. So, again, it's, I suppose it's just bringing it back down to what do you enjoy, what makes what gets you up in the morning. I think is crucial to a lot of this stuff, really, isn't it?
And it really does depend on what you want to get out of it, and you have to just make the peace with the path that you've taken, because obviously there are a lot of writers out there who spend a lot of time analysing tropes and use templates, or they know what their target audience want to the degree that they know how to replicate their success. Once you hit onto a good thing, start rolling with that. And I guess one of the difficulties of being an indie author is that, not so much a difficulty, but an interesting aspect of it is that you're a business person as well as a creative. So I do view it as a very separate thing, and I have taken a fairly business-like approach to it's a book when I'm writing it, and when I'm finished with it, it's a product that I'm trying to sell as well. So you have to make the best of the product that you've got. On the other hand, I feel like you can, I don't want to say too far, because I know plenty of writers do it. Plenty of writers will write book one, and if it's not taking off, they won't bother writing book two, because it won't make financial sense for them to do that. I don't feel that's a route I want to go down, because for me, I want to tell a story and I want to complete that story. And whether or not there's only 10 loyal readers or 10 million loyal readers, I don't want to let them down. So, that's a business decision that I've made. I may waste some of my time in a commercial sense on books that aren't going to sell as many as the next series that I could get to 2 years earlier, but I'm not going to let my readers down in that sense. And that's no judgment on the people who decide to make the commercial decision, because a lot of those people are making a day-to-day living out of it and are successfully combining creativity and business. I fully applaud everybody who's able to do that. I just have to hope, like you say about the Brandon Sanderson thing, you just have to hope that at some point luck will kick in, or you'll find your audience in such a way that you'll naturally get there without having to compromise on, making those hard decisions about cutting things off before you really want to, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
wise.
It's a difference of product. It's one is an approach of product, and one is an approach of art, isn't it? And there obviously is a blurring of those two things. But for me, I suppose I just want to produce something I feel 100% proud of. Yeah, I'm not saying that every single thing I write is perfect. I think my later books are better than my earlier ones. To be perfectly honest with you, I think I'm still learning. But I don't think I ever I think writing for trend and writing to push a product out there, it's a very different endeavor, isn't it? At the end of the day, and there's absolutely right. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, and plenty of people do very well at it. But I don't think I could do it. Is the bottom line. So again, there's no point me looking at people that do that business model and thinking, fantastic, I should do that. I won't enjoy it. So there's no point in doing it. Whereas I'm sure they're very happy doing that and leading a very good life, enjoying it as a result. There's more than one route through the forest, isn't there, with all this sort of stuff. And you've got to know what path you're on and then walk it with sort of, with confidence, really.
My friend Rachel, Tim's speaking my language. Where can I get his books? Found it.
That's a good question.
Hey.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And also our friend Matt from Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews. PL about to come out with a book full of battle and sex and raking the dough.
A novella.
Wow. No.
Just write a little novella. Just do a Sarah J. Maas thing,
Yeah, just
Port of
sell
Frost and
out.
Starlight.
Yeah, sell out that's not. I and it's funny, like those are things, for example, in my books that are just part of my books because I enjoy writing about them, but they're not the meat of the book, right? And they never will be because I write about some stuff that's very different from I think that. But I also wouldn't hamstring myself that I couldn't write more about it. If I decided one day I want to write more battle scenes or more romance or whatever, or I want to write a romance book or a book that's largely faster paced, more battles. You never want to confine yourself either as a writer. Do you know what I mean? We don't know what we're going to be doing. One thing I'm learning as I'm getting older is you really don't know what you're going to be doing and where you're going to be going in 5 years as much as you think you do. I could never have envisioned me, blogging, right? 5 years ago, right? That was not part of the plan, but it just happened organically. I didn't think I'd be sitting beside, the experts like Taylor and Steve, interviewing authors. Like that was not something I ever thought was going to happen, but it happened, right? It just goes to show you don't know the direction your writing is going to take. In my mind, me, guys, you know me well. I'm a planner. I have all these things planned out. I have, 2 prequel trilogies and another 7-book series, and I'm writing 7 books and all this stuff. But who knows how that's going to look in 10, 15 years, right? So, there's also that aspect of unpredictability with this stuff. So in a positive way. So yeah, for sure.
I never thought I'd be doing live content in the way that I do now. That was never in the plan. Pre-recorded was my idea. Steve laughing at me because it's your fault, Steve, that I'm doing so much live content. But
yeah, how did you guys get? Like, how did you and Taylor get to where you are? How did you get there?
Teaching myself how to do it in the wee hours of the morning, essentially. Sorry, Steve, you mean to cut you off? Go ahead.
No, I thought I was gonna say, PL, how it was Good Metal Gods brought us together, but you meant period, live.
Yeah, period. You have a movie channel, movie analysis channel. You have you just mushroomed as much as you're saying, oh well, I'm not sure if I want to pack it in. Well, you just keep getting bigger.
I know, it's ridiculous. Yeah, it does take a while to do live. To do live content, it is a whole different thing to manage the because when it's just us, it's different. But when there's other people watching and there's people commenting, and when do you display comments and when do you it's all. Well, the first time I did it, I was overwhelmed. It was a lot, but it just takes practice. Still learning, for sure.
Yeah. We're all still learning, but you do it so well. You and Taylor do it so well, and you make it look pretty easy. And that's where, I say to myself, am I going to get to a point where this is easy? And if I feel that way, does that mean there's something wrong because I'm getting too big for my britches or whatever? But am I going to get to a point where this writing thing feels easy? And I don't think so. I don't know if I'm ever going to feel that. And I don't know how Taylor and Steve feel about this YouTube stuff or how Jacob and Tim feel about writing, but I don't think I'm ever going to be completely comfortable. I may be more satisfied, and I definitely feel I'm getting more satisfied with my writing as I gain experience. But I don't know if I'll ever feel comfortable. Isn't the word that I would attach to how I feel about when I release a book. Everything's puckered. I'm like, oh my god, this is I'm gonna melt in a puddle of nerves. But yeah, like I don't know if I'll ever lose that feeling. Will you? I don't know if I'll lose that.
I don't think so, just because it's constant creation. So, and this could be taken in a good or a bad way, but but once you get something out, no matter how much effort you've put into that, that's finished now. At least in the YouTube space, it's out there, and you can't touch it anymore. So you're on to the next thing already. And so I think that pacing, like I said, can have positives and negatives, but a positive side of it is that it keeps it fresh. So I'm always thinking about the next idea, or what's something else I can introduce to my channel, or how can I change this, or what's something I haven't talked about that I want to talk about. So I find that kind of pacing helps. And also, a good form of comparison is seeing someone else's channel and being like, I love that sound system, how they sound, how did they get that? Or I really enjoy this person's discussion videos. How can I create a space on my channel where I can have discussions like this because they interest me? So I think it doesn't become easy. And then there's just the technical side of it. You know, I took the leap for Premiere Pro and stuff like that. You certainly do not have to do that to make content. Anyone watching, don't think you need to do that. I just decided to. And the learning curve for that software is just, it's a mountain. So I'm at a comfortable place with that now where I can make the same level of content, but there's so many things that software can do I can't do. So learning tutorials, I try to learn, one new skill in that software every week if I can. So kind of what you guys talked about before with writing is continuous education, just kind of in your free time. It never gets easier. And live content is something I'm still learning. Like I said, that wasn't in the cards in the beginning. So learning how to make that more streamlined, or how to care for guests better, that kind of thing is always something I'm learning. So.
Blame Steve. Blame Steve.
See, you pointed the wrong way too. It's not just me.
Yeah, no.
It's always a mirror image.
Reverend Rachel PL, I kind of feel that. I keep thinking I'm 100% confident and comfortable in my books. Then someone talks about how they got my book and started to read, and I start sweating cannonballs. Lots of internal screeching.
Yeah. The scariest moment for me is when someone posts and I wasn't expecting it, that I bought your book, great, and if they put it on Twitter, oh my God, thank you. But you go through that, we talked about imposter syndrome to death. Won't beat that again, but yeah. So but yeah, I don't know, and I do ask myself sometimes, does certainly someone who doesn't even know how many books they've sold, like Tim, Jacob, myself, we know how many books we sell. You can log in right now and find out I just sold the book, or I haven't sold as many books, etc. And it's instantaneous, and we care because we're at that level. I think it's fair to say, but I hate to pick on him again. Brandon Sanderson, I don't know if he thinks about how many books he sells in a day. He probably does, or he may. I don't know. Or someone just tells him, hey, so I don't know. I guess it's all comes down to I am happy with the way things are going in general, with now becoming kind of like this part-time booktuber, writing and blogging, and I am happy with the direction my career is going, even though it's not perhaps exactly where I want to be, but it as Tim said, it is a joy, and I am somewhat compulsive about it. I wouldn't put this much work into it if I wasn't, and I think we all feel the same in our own little space, that it is a big learning curve. I'm learning so much as a writer. I every day I'm like, wow, I need to work on this. Oh, I need to do this better. But it's all good, because you don't start off by being the best writer in the world, right, or the best booktuber, the best anything. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, but that's, for me, that's part of the fun, isn't it? That's why you do it, is to learn. And I'm happy enough to admit, what I released in 2020 is actually I actually didn't think it was quite good. I actually went back and did some editing work on that, which is when you're an indie, that is one of the godsends, isn't it? There's no such thing as a static book, which I think is fortunate, because I think my first book, it just had a few just a few too many typing errors in, frankly. I didn't have a grip on editing when I first released. I think I have now got a better grip and a better technique to get a self-edited book, which is my bag, get that from start to finish and get that out there. But I didn't have that in 2020. And, frankly, I look back and think, well, it was as good as I could possibly do it at the time. But knowing what I knew in 22, 23, I can do it better. And I actually took the time to sort of go back and do some of those revisions. I think, again, it made it a slightly stronger book. I forgot to put the map in. I mean, that's how sort of amateurish it was at the time. There's no map in those early editions if you've got the paperback or the early Kindle download. Sorry. I have now addressed that issue. So I think, we're always, I think learning is part of the fun. Recognizing when you've made mistakes and correcting them is an important thing to do.
What about you, Jacob?
I don't think it'll ever get easy. I think it's easier to, in terms of knowing what works for you and what doesn't work for you, in terms of routine, times a day, how to get around particular obstacles, that kind of stuff. But I think by the very nature of what I'm trying to do, I'm always having to draw something out of myself and put it in such a way that it's bringing something new to the table. I feel, going back to the legacy thing, I no longer feel, I've been reading far too much Stoic philosophy recently, that I want to work towards any kind of posthumous fame because I won't be here for it. And I don't really have any interest in that now. But I do want to, I've lost my train of thought now. What was I saying?
It's getting late, yeah.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. No, it's gone. It's completely gone. It might come back.
We're live, everybody. This is what happens sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm a little prone to brain farts at the moment.
Let's get to a couple of comments and see if it comes back to you. Our friend Daniel Sanderson's at a level where he's more interested in how he did against James Patterson's book, released on the same day.
For those kind of problems, eh?
Yeah. And Rachel, remember the day we all used to defer to Tolkien? Then Brandon Sanderson came on the scene, a new challenger approaches.
Yeah, I don't know if, and maybe, I don't know if, and you all put it so aptly, we can't chase, etc. We can't chase immortality. We can't chase the sales. We can't chase these things, these arbitrary benchmarks and goals. We can't chase them, but all we can do is celebrate when we know we hit something, right? I think that's more like it now. Oh, you came to Jacob. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
When you're done with the thought.
No, please go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm not so fussed about the legacy that I'll leave behind. I don't want to be like, I've left my mark on the world or anything like that, because that's a difficult thing to do for anybody anyway, and you're not going to be there for it, and you won't know it's happened. But what I do put out, I want to mean something, and I want it to touch people in a certain way, and I am trying to convey truth in it. I'm not like trying to put a message out there, but it means something to me. And I don't think that process of always digging deeper in yourself is ever going to get easy. That's all I was trying to say.
Yeah, no, it's getting late I know it's getting late for you guys. The time just flies, and so I know it's getting late for you, those of you in the UK. So, but before we sign off, Jacob, can you tell us where to find you and your work?
Yes, you can find me at jacobsannox.com, and that's SANNOX. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'm trying to use more often. If you search Jacob Sannox, I'm pretty much the only thing that will come up, I would imagine. And my books are only available through Amazon at the moment.
And Tim?
So you can find, I'm got a website as well, so timhardieauthor.co.uk. So that's Hardie with an IE rather than a Y, because I like to make life difficult for everybody, but that is my actual name and I can't do much about it. I'm more on Twitter, probably in reality is my favoured social media. So that's at Tim Hardie Author, and Tim Hardie Author Public for Facebook, if you want to find me relatively easily there. So that those are my two main areas. And a bit like Jacob, yeah, I'm at the moment still Amazon author, so it's that's the bookshop for me if you want to get my stuff.
Nice. And PL and Taylor, who wants to go first?
Okay. You can find me on Page Chewing, either on my channel or on Steve's channel, the Friday Conversations, or we need to think of a better way to say this, but Page Chewing proper is what I've started saying, like the other version of Page Chewing. You can find me on either of those on my channel, Made Between the Pages. I am also on Twitter. And you can also find me at Before We Go blog, where I'm an assistant editor and I write reviews for the website. I think those are probably the main places at this point.
And PL?
Yeah, so maybe beside Taylor and Steve on Page Chewing, either Page Chewing Friday Conversations or main Page Chewing, the other one, however you want to classify that. Before We Go blog, again, where I'm also assistant editor, a blog with Steve and Taylor. Shout out to Beth Tabler, our boss. The books, www.plstore.com is the website. Well, Dragon Kingdom Saga, The Last of the Atalanteans, and Dragon Kingdom, with 2 books out now. Lord and King is coming in the next month or so. So, okay, the nerves are building, obviously. So, thank you. Yeah. So, yes, you have it on the Kindle. Twitter is my preferred lurking spot. I am on Facebook and Instagram, but really and truly, Twitter is where I am. And I just want to say quickly that I just remember I am a big member of the Tim Hardie and Jacob Sannox fan club. Their books are phenomenal. Go buy them because you won't be sorry.
Very well said. I'll try and keep it quick. I am on Vero at that 1MFer. It's where I post my mostly photography stuff, but everything else. And also Steve Talks Movies on YouTube or at pagechewing.com. So thank you, Jacob and Tim, so much for staying up late. I know it's late for both of you, so thanks for hanging out with us. Come back anytime. Just let us know when you'd like to visit again, and we'll make it happen.
Thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's been good. Nice to talk to you all.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for coming by and interacting in the chat. It makes a big difference when everyone interacts and asks questions. Thanks to all of you, and hope you all have a great weekend. And we'll see everyone very soon.